So thank you so much for tuning in today. Just before lunch, we have a very interesting topic to discuss and dive in today. And us is Matthias from Connect AI and me, Michael, from Inno-Pact. We have been working in the innovation field, in the corporate education field for quite a while. Me personally now through Inno-Pact, where I do freelance projects with larger companies and also startups. And it's always about the topic of innovation, change management. How can we bring in new things into the companies? Before that, I was a long time at Swisscom. I see we also have a couple of friends from there with us today. So always an interesting topic. And of course, most relevantly today with AI. And with me is Matthias, if you want to share some words. Oh. Go for it now. I think you have to unmute yourself and then it should work.
Now it works. You hear me?
Perfect. Yeah.
Perfect. So hi everyone, Matthias. I'm the founder of Connect AI. We basically started working with generative AI for the last 2 years, more or less. We are focusing on really assessing where to go and where it makes sense to build and then build it. At the moment, we are quite active with telecommunication and customer support in Germany and Switzerland. And the latest project we focus on is more in employee productivity. So we started very agentic or autonomous, and now we're going one step back and go more in productivity. And there we focus more on how can you use ChatGPT and so on in a safe way. The request came from a customer. And with that, but more to it later, we had to think about the EU AI Act in a different way. So we'll talk more about regulations and what it means for the usage of AI later.
Super. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's jump right into it. Also, for everybody in the call, think about what you want to get out of it. Keep it for discussion. At the end, we're super eager to discuss with you. So what can you actually expect from today to make it very clear what our goal is? So one important thing you can take with is how you think about the LLM landscape. So when we talk about AI today, we talk specifically about LLMs. You're going to notice during this call, we have a laser focus here because the topic is quite wide. So we talk about large language models. We're going to talk about which ones. So you're going to see how can you map them in the company. We're going to talk about some top use cases at work that we see with our clients and also eager to hear about yours. There's also going to be a peer exchange at the end. And last but not least, it should be a bit of inspiration as well for you. And for us, from Matthias and I, we also want to be very transparent. This is what we do for a living. So in the end, if this resonates with you, if you have a need for customer education in the LLM space, as we believe many have, reach out to us. We would be thrilled to work with you. But also, if you have feedback for the format, for the content, let us know. So with that, let's dive in. Where are we today? So as we all know, we start with the problem. What is happening in the world right now? Generally, there's a lot of rapid AI and LLM development happening, and it poses some challenges and even induce some risks in the market as we see. We have 3 main topics we'd like to highlight. So one is definitely the rapid progress in LLMs. We have seen from chatbots, adding search, now reasoning capabilities are widespread. Research capabilities, where they really dig in deeper, are coming right now. And there's a lot of talk about agentic AI coming through LLMs. So a lot of is happening. The risk is that employees cannot keep up by themselves, and employees are crucial for companies. So companies lose their competitive edge. This is happening right now. Also, what's happening is that the corporate side of it is lagging behind. This is not out of bad management or anything. It's just natural because in a company, you have to think about different steps, like what is our AI strategy? How can we procure it? You always have a risk minimization approach as well. So you're a bit slower, you're a bit more guardrailed, and then you have the whole rollout process. So you're always lagging behind. And what we see in the market is that around 80% of employees prefer their private LLMs to the corporate LLMs, which is a huge number. So you can think of 80% of the traffic of a company is going into LLMs is going to private models rather than corporate models. And that's a risk of different reasons, also data privacy, things where we're not going to go into detail, but it's definitely not the best case. the corporate IT should be the LLM you want to use, and it should be as capable. And last but not least, we have a lot of AI compliance and regulation coming or already being here, most notably the EU AI Act. There's other things coming, and this results in a risk of compliance and also business risk. So you might not be compliant with it, and it might be some financial damages with it. So to this topic, I would like to pass on to Matthias to tell us a little bit more about the AI regulation, because it's such a crucial point, and it also really speeds up the need for AI literacy in the companies.
Yes, so first of all, I'm myself not the biggest fan of regulations, and looking back, why maybe OpenAI pushed it so much, it was that they could keep their competitive edge a bit longer, which DeepSeek then proved to be wrong. But so not a big fan, but let's dive into it. We have it now, and for us, we had to learn how to work with it. So I give you just a very quick insight of what it means as a company and what it means as a Swiss company, and what are pragmatic steps to maybe start today. So since February, it's live, and it means a couple of things started. One is this AI literacy that you're kind of you should do as a company who is using AI tools. And AI tools are described in two ways. If you're a supplier or if you're a deployer or a provider, and basically everyone who uses ChatGPT today is a deployer of AI systems. So basically, you should educate your people in how to use them. The second step that is live is the risk categories. So the EU AI Act has 4 risk categories. It differentiates. It starts with the 2 first one, prohibited AI and high risk AI. I think for most companies, this shouldn't be the case. The first one is prohibited. The second one comes with a lot of regulation. And maybe just a quick side note here. Dangerous thing is you end up quite fast in this category if you go in the wrong direction. So just one anecdote: if you basically screen your CVs through a ChatGPT and let it make decision which ones you should exclude and which ones you should take, you're a high-risk AI system, because it makes decision about employees, future employees, and that, yeah, maybe you shouldn't do that. And the 2 last ones, limited and minimal, I think that's where we mostly work on and what we are interested in. And so far, I think what everyone should probably embrace is label content that is AI created. Is it image, text, vision, videos, or chatbots? So that's what we do. We were quite we did it from day one, since I thought like AI is getting to a level that you can distinguish it between humans. So you should market, and maybe a bit of quality aspect as well, since we said these legacy chatbots, they normally suck, and we make it a bit better. But yeah, these are the 2 things you should remember. And why should you care? Not yet, but there will come fines for it, 7% of global revenue, up to 35 million. And I think it's a lot of trust and proficiency and risk you cope with it. So for Swiss companies, it will take some time. So we have till 2026. We just had a ruling, and then we decide now how we gonna play it and how we're gonna structure it in each category, basically. But I think very pragmatically thinking about that, I think I would start with 2 things. And in my eyes, it totally makes sense, because the risk not to do it is quite high, and you probably will have to cope with it in the next couple of years. So AI is here and it won't go away. So why don't you start educating your employees on how to use it and what risks they should mitigate, and start with what AI tools do I use, make an assessment, and make a risk assessment on that as well. And so I think these 2 things I would start right away, and delaying it just increases the risk of shadow IT and misuse, in my eyes.
Super. Thank you so much. So I put myself back into Spotlight, I think. Perfect. Okay. Good. So thank you, Matthias, for this excursion into the EU AI Act. So another super important point, we saw that the business need, it moves fast, and we see the regulatory challenge. So this is kind of the situation we see today in a lot of companies. We have LLMs being rolled out on the left side, like a huge LLM launch party, but it doesn't really reach the employees. They don't really use it. 80% use their own. We see on the right side, the use of private AI is still a lot there. So they lag behind all the opportunities, and it's not compliant going forward. So what we need is an employee education that actually works. So we want everybody should come out being better using LLMs. So we put it very bluntly. That's one of the goals. We also need to get feedback from the people how we have to further develop the internal LLMs, because right now it's detached. We have teams deploying LLMs, people not using them. So this feedback cycle is bad for agile development of it. And we have to ensure the compliance of it. So let's dive into it. How do we do it? That's the solution. So this is the most sales pitchy part of it, but maybe you can take it with you. And if you think, hey, this is a great time for it, I don't want to let you go out of here without having seen it. So what do we actually do in our workshops? It's a 4-hour in-person workshop or online, roughly 10 or 20 employees. That's a good size we found. Crucially, it's interactive, applied, and collaborative. So it shouldn't be huge classrooms where nobody takes anything out, but people have to be engaged. It also has to be tailored to the company. We cannot just give co-pilot trainings to everybody and they're going to do it, because the landscape, as we're going to see, of the AI tools they use is very different, and also their strategy. And also, last but not least, who do we do it with in the company? It's typically HR, IT, and legal. These are the most important functions to be on board, to help to get it to the people that it actually works. Content-wise, it's very reduced to the max, you could say. So we start with the LLM landscape. That's also an internal activity to figure out what are we actually using if you've already done it because of the EU AI Act. That's amazing. That's great. So we can leverage that. If not, it's a great time to do it now, just so you know what's actually there. Then we dive into the dangers. You see, this is a bit of the compliance angle to say, hey, don't do X and Y. We have to go through that to then get to the top use cases, which are a bit more, shall we say, inspiring. So what can you actually use it for? Be proactive, create something new. What can we do with it? We also like to work with guest input. So this can be industry experts that open up a bit more. So it could be people like Matthias from Connect AI, who have built amazing products that are out in the market that are maybe a bit further down the road, but we want to give the people a perspective why AI and LLMs matter and will matter more in the future. And then last but not least, there's always an open format where people can really engage and talk about it. So for today, I want to give you really the meat of it so we can dive in. So you can already see, hey, what's the situation like? So what's an LLM landscape? We're going to go through it quite top level because we don't do the workshop here. It's just a brief overview of what companies should think about. There's a lot of LLMs out there. There's open ones, there's cloud ones. Here you have an overview. It's by no means exhaustive, but it's a selection of the most common ones. So from ChatGPT, you have the Llama models down to DeepSeek. What we then do with the companies is categorize them in different buckets. These are not the same buckets as in the EU AI Act, because we have the perspective of how does an average office worker actually use them every day. Remember, we want to improve their usability. We want to make them more effective and also more compliant. So this is how we go about it. We have different buckets from not specified. That's when you don't ask, you don't tell, you just ignore the fact that there's LLMs out there. You don't dig in. Mostly not ideal. Then you can block some LLMs. You can say, well, we don't really know what it is, so we just shut it out. Nobody gets access. It's prohibited because you cannot reach them actually, or we just prohibit it by contract that you're not allowed. And next category, you can tolerate them. You can say, well, you can use them as long as they're hosted in Europe, for example, with the same guidelines as in the employee handbook, or you can even encourage. And when a company goes through that, it's quite interesting what you get. For example, here it's anonymized, but by a leading fintech accelerator, for example, they have a strategy of having free, so ChatGPT, Perplexity, and their own customly hosted LLM that they support a lot. And then for all the others, nothing is specified. It's kind of a don't ask, don't tell situation, which you can imagine is not ideal because there's a lot of data going in there and nobody feels accountable for it. And so that's the first exercise, to see which LLMs are we touching and how do we think about them? And are we happy about how we're set up? We do that for different companies. So a Swiss energy company has a different approach where they have their different models. They work with Llama, for example, that they host locally. And they have a quite open-minded policy towards other models. So they give guidelines out and you can use whatever. Swiss banks, they're probably a bit different. They have Copilot, everything else is blocked. So you see different companies have a different approach to it, but it's great to have an overview. What are we using inside the company and where do we want to grow strategically? So with that in mind, let's go into the don'ts and do's. As said, in the workshops, we're going to work with the companies to identify the most relevant cases for them. What we do here is our general view. So we bring them in, but we adapt them to the client's need. So the most common don'ts that you shouldn't do is, we talked about it, is the leak trap. Most or many LLMs, when you post something in, it's not sure what happens with the data. It might leak out, like it happened with DeepSeek, for example, right after it came out. It can also be used for training. So you might upload something on a free tier and then it's used for training the next model. And all of a sudden you have your data exposed in the LLM. So that's the first thing you have to be very careful about. Then we have the hallucination hazards. You probably heard of that. LLMs hallucinate a lot. You could say that's the only thing they really do. So you have to be aware that even if they're convincing, you have to check everything. And that doesn't really go away. There's a lot of mitigation being done about that, but it's something that people have to understand, that you have to deal with that. Because otherwise, the next thing happens, which is the hallucination humiliation. So if you get something out of an LLM, and you use that as your own output, you might be surprised by yourself when you present it in front of the board and you realize, oh, this acquisition that's on your slide, that never happened. That was just hallucinated. So you have to be careful not to take everything from an LLM right away. Also, there's a bias bomb. Because all the LLMs are trained on the data of the internet has a certain bias, but also in post-training, the LLMs get tweaked to behave in a desired way. So you can see huge differences if you use ChatGPT, for example, or you compare it to Grok, the model by Elon Musk and X, which is a bit more wild, a bit more direct, maybe a bit less soft. And it's not good or bad, it's just different biases. So I found, for example, ChatGPT is sometimes a bit too supportive for me. It doesn't really challenge a lot, but I want to be challenged if I work with an LLM. So I have to get around the bias and really push it to be kind of ruthless and tell me what it really thinks, so to say. And last but not least, you have a lazy mind syndrome. That's if an employee uses LLMs too much, you don't really own the content and you're not so deep in the material anymore. And so you have to be careful about that. It's still your job, it's your content. You have to be right for that. But that's a bit more of risk mitigation. So that's interesting, it's crucial, but even more interesting. And what we like to do more also in the workshops is to focus about what can you actually do? So what are the good use cases? And again, these are the ones that we see a lot, but we also flesh out with the companies, what are they using it right now? The most obvious one, of course, is Ghostwriting Guru. It's the core capability of a LLM. I think that changed everything and it won't go back. Whenever you have to produce a text, the LLM is probably going to be better at you, and I think we have to embrace it. You still have to own it, but as a starting point, it's a really great tool to do that. And it can improve your writing and it can improve your productivity a lot. Then a use case that's very common, just when we talk about clients, is the translator. Many companies switched to all translation tasks being done by LLMs now. So that also has a couple of pros, a couple of cons. It's important to be aware of that and use it properly. It's used a lot, especially in Switzerland, where we have 3-4 languages that are used quite commonly. So a lot of data goes in there just for translation. Then one case that I like a lot, because I've been in the coaching space a lot, is everybody now has a personal coach right next to them. And in a company, that's incredibly valuable. So for your career planning, for your next steps, you can actually use the LLM to guide you through it. If you know you're sometimes maybe a bit too timid, you don't like to get out there, ask for a promotion, the LLM can really help you to just to get ahead, or maybe also to do a better job through that. So that's an amazing use case. It's an everything expert. So whenever you think about making a tender for a new feature, for example, you don't have to rely so much on external experts as you do today. You have it on your fingertips. So you can talk about it. Is if you want to program a feature, it can give you a pretty good estimate to how much effort should it take, what's the complexity of it, what should it cost, and you just have more power in that. Like you can get the expert right now on your laptop whenever you need it, and that's amazing. And last but not least, that's quite new, but I'm also very excited about it. If you have ChatGPT, there's the deep research function. After reasoning, I think that's really a game changer. If you want to research any new market, or you want to try something new with it, it takes a query and goes out for like 10 minutes, and it comes back with a very good summarization that you can actually use. So these are the top use cases we see, and that we also think through the workshop, it's crucial to get the people to work with them, to see, hey, which ones are working well for them, which ones do we have to push within the companies to make it more successful. So with this, that was a very quick overview about AI literacy and also the concept of the workshop that we supply. So with this, I would very much like to open it up to you. Like, what are your thoughts on it? Here's a couple of things that we would like to discuss with you. So how do you think we could improve it further? Is there anything you see missing? But also, what's your experience with LLMs? How can we educate them better? And maybe you have other do's and don'ts. So with that, feel free to raise the hand and we can start the discussion.